This story is about a woman named Hannah, and the three knocks that began appearing in her life every single night at 2:11 a.m. Hannah was 28 when she moved into a quiet one-story rental house on a suburban street. It wasn't anything special, 2 bedrooms, a small backyard, a creaky wooden deck. But it was cheap, it was close to her job at the hospital, and after a rough breakup, it finally felt like her own space. She worked odd shifts as a nurse's aide, so she was used to being awake at weird hours. Nightmares, strange noises, the general loneliness of living alone. She'd already prepared herself for that. What she wasn't prepared for was how quickly the house would learn her routine, and then start adding its own. The first time it happened, she'd actually had a good day. She came home from a long afternoon shift, microwaved leftovers, watched a couple episodes of some dumb reality show, and slept around midnight. The last thing she remembered before falling asleep was checking her phone. 1:32 a.m. Later, something pulled her abruptly out of sleep. Her room was silent and dark. The digital clock by her bed glowed red. 2:11 a.m. She lay there for a second, listening. The house was quiet. No heater, no fridge hum, just that still, heavy silence you only really notice late at night. She was about to roll over and go back to sleep when she heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks from the back of the house. Her heart started pounding. It sounded like it came from the back door in the kitchen, the one that opened onto the deck and looked out over the small, fenced yard. She held her breath, waited. Nothing followed. She told herself it was wind, a shifting board. Anything except a person. She sat up, grabbed her phone, and checked the time again. 2:11 a.m. She stared at it for a second, as if the exact time mattered. Then she told herself she was being paranoid, lay back down, and eventually drifted off. The next night, she went to bed around the same time. This time, she remembered it more clearly. She was in that half-dreaming state when she jolted awake for no obvious reason. Her eyes went straight to the clock. 2:10 a.m. She frowned. She hadn't set any alarms. She lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling her pulse in her throat. The numbers clicked over to 2:11 and right on cue. Same rhythm, same place. She slid out of bed, every board under her feet protesting with soft creaks. The hallway to the kitchen felt longer in the dark. Shadows stretched where she didn't remember seeing them during the day. She reached the kitchen and flipped the light switch. Nothing. She remembered then. The back porch light was out. She'd been meaning to replace the bulb. The only light came from the small digital clock on the microwave and the weak orange glow from the street filtering through the front curtains. She stood a few feet away from the back door. The door was solid wood with a narrow vertical window in the middle. At night, without the porch light, that window was just a black rectangle, a mirror of the inside of the kitchen. She took one cautious step closer, then another.
Hello?
She called quietly, hating how shaky her voice sounded. No answer. She reached for the deadbolt to make sure it was locked. It was. She didn't have the courage to put her face up to the glass. The idea of leaning close to that black rectangle and seeing something staring back from the other side. Just thinking about it made her stomach twist, so she backed away. Maybe it was the house settling. Maybe it was the deck warping. That's what she told herself. She went back to bed, but sleep didn't come as easily. By the third night, she was no longer telling herself it was random. She tried to stay awake this time, checking her phone every few minutes, watching the minutes crawl. At 2:09, she put the phone down, stared at the ceiling, and just listened. The numbers changed to 2:11. Her heart was already pounding when it came. Same cadence. Same direction. She flinched so hard the bed creaked underneath her. That night, she didn't get up to check. Every instinct told her not to. She pulled the blanket over her head like a child, held her breath, and waited for something else. More knocks. A voice. A sound of breaking glass. Nothing. Just those 3 knocks. And then the silence that somehow felt heavier than the noise. The next morning, she told one of her coworkers about it on break. Her coworker, Jess, laughed it off. "Could be the pipes," she said. "Or the neighbor's trash can, or raccoons." 3 knocks. That's so specific. It's probably just something loose hitting the same place. Hannah nodded. It was the answer she wanted to believe, but she still went home and checked the backyard in broad daylight. The deck boards were old but solid. There was a metal patio chair lying on its side, a rusty grill, a couple of loose branches near the fence. Nothing that screamed, "This is what you've been hearing 3 nights in a row at 2:11 a.m. She made herself a promise that if it happened again, she'd call the non-emergency police line, just in case. It happened again, and again, for a full week. Every night she woke up around 2:10, stressed and waiting, and at 2:11 there would be 3 slow, hollow knocks from the back of the house. Sometimes they sounded a little farther away, sometimes a little closer, sometimes a bit louder, like someone was testing the door harder. Nothing ever followed. No rattling handles, no footsteps, no voices, just 3 knocks. She finally called the 911. 2 officers came out in the early evening. They checked the yard, walked the perimeter, shined flashlights along the fence line. One of them asked if she had any exes, anyone who might be messing with her. She said no. They told her to keep the doors locked, leave some lights on, and call again if she actually saw someone. They made it sound like that was the only scenario they took seriously. As they were leaving, one of the officers paused in the kitchen, eyeing the back door, and said, "You might want to hang a curtain over that door window. At night, it's just a mirror. Easy to scare yourself." Hannah laughed awkwardly and said she'd consider it. She didn't mention that the idea of not being able to see through it felt worse. The officers left. That night, the knocks came exactly on time again. 2:11 a.m. This time, though, something was different. Between the second and third knock, she heard breathing. Not hers. Slow. Right on the other side of the wall. She sat up in bed, every hair on her body standing on end. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You awake?" She stared at it. Her first thought was wrong number. Her second thought was that officer somehow. Before she could respond, another text came in. Another came instantly. "I can hear you moving." She froze, typed back a shaky, "Who is this?" No reply. The silence in the house grew unbearable. Finally, she dialed Jess. The phone rang and went to voicemail. Now she was trapped in several kinds of silence. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day at work, she asked Jess if she'd texted her in the middle of the night. Jess checked her phone and shook her head. "Why? What happened?" Hannah tried to downplay it, said it was probably some creep with the wrong number. Jess frowned. That evening, she blocked the unknown number. Then she did something she'd been putting off. She dragged a step stool into the hallway and pushed open the square hatch in the ceiling that led to the attic. A wave of hot, dusty air rolled over her. She pointed her phone flashlight into the dark, narrow space. Old insulation, crossbeams, a few aging boxes the landlord had left up there. Nothing else. No mattresses, no signs of someone living up there, no movement. She told herself that would make her feel better. It didn't. Over the next few nights, things got stranger. Food she knew she hadn't eaten was gone from the fridge. She'd leave her keys on the kitchen counter and find them on the small table by the front door. Once she came home and swore the back door lock was turned the wrong way, like someone had locked it from the inside after leaving. But there were no broken windows, no signs of forced entry, nothing missing except stupid things like a granola bar or a yogurt. She started sleeping with the bedroom door locked. It made her feel a little safer. Until the knocks moved too. It was a Thursday night when 211 came and went without any sound from the kitchen. Hannah lay there, eyes open in the dark, counting seconds. 10, 20, 30? Nothing. She almost cried with relief. Maybe whoever or whatever it was had gotten bored. Maybe it had just been a weird, annoying pattern that her brain had exaggerated. She started to drift off, and then Hannah shot upright, heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. The knocks weren't loud, but they were polite, patient, like whoever was on the other side knew she was awake. She stared at the door. The knob didn't turn. The frame didn't shake. After what felt like a full minute, she finally managed to speak. She whispered,
Who's there?
Silence. She checked the time. 2:11 a.m. The next day, she took off work and had the landlord come by. He came over that afternoon, annoyed but curious. He was in his late 50s, perpetually tired-looking, the sort of man who had probably seen every excuse tenants had ever come up with. She didn't tell him everything, just that she thought someone was messing around near the house at night and that she was hearing things. He walked through each room, checked the windows, jiggled the back door. He opened the bedroom door, looked at the lock, shrugged. It's an old place, he said. Houses creak, pipes bang. You live alone. Your imagination fills in the blanks. He offered to install an extra lock on the back door, if it made her feel better. He said it like it was a favor. That night, a storm hit. Rain hammered the roof, wind rattled the siding. Somewhere outside, a loose piece of metal clanged gently again and again. The noise, for once, was almost comforting. It made the knocks feel less predictable, less inevitable. She must have fallen asleep at some point, because the next thing she knew, she was waking up in darkness. After midnight, the power went out. Her phone displayed 2:09 a.m. She stared at it, unable to breathe. At 2:11 exactly, for a few precious seconds, nothing happened. Then from the kitchen, muffled by distance but still unmistakable, Hannah slid out of bed, moving on instinct more than thought. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and inched toward the door. Her hand hovered over the lock. It took everything she had to turn it. She opened the door just a crack and peeked into the hallway. Empty. She reached the kitchen. The back door window reflected her face, pale and trembling. She forced herself to take 2 more steps.
Who are you?
She whispered. No answer. Her hand lifted toward the deadbolt, just to check that it was still locked. And from inches away, she screamed and stumbled back, nearly dropping her phone. The light swung wildly. For a split second, the reflection in the glass shifted just enough for her to see something she hadn't seen before. Behind her, in the reflection, not in the kitchen itself, but in the faint ghost image of the hallway, stood the outline of a man, tall, hunched, a cap pulled low. He was standing just at the edge of where her phone's light ended in reality. But in the reflection, he was right behind her. She spun around. The hallway was empty. Her heart felt like it was going to rip through her ribs. She looked back at the glass. The reflection showed him closer now, like he'd taken a step forward. She didn't think. She ran. She bolted to her bedroom, slammed the door, locked it, and called 911. As the phone rang in her ear, she heard it again. Not from the kitchen this time. From right outside her bedroom door. Knuckles on hollow wood. 911, what's your emergency? She could barely speak, but somehow the words came out. She told them someone was in her house, that she could hear him knocking, that she lived alone, that she didn't know how he got in. The dispatcher stayed on the line, voice calm, asking her to stay where she was, to keep the door locked, to listen. The knocking didn't stop. It changed. It moved. From the door to the wall. soft, deliberate taps trailing along the drywall, as if someone was dragging their knuckles from room to room. Then up, to the ceiling. Hannah pressed herself into the floor, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. Somewhere above her, heavy footsteps creaked along the attic beams. When police arrived, the attic hatch was open. They also found the back door deadbolt locked, the windows intact, and no signs of forced entry. For a while, it looked like they weren't going to find anything at all. Then one of the officers noticed something in the hallway. A faint, greasy handprint, high up on the wall near the ceiling, right next to where the attic hatch opened. They went up. In the attic, pressed back into the shadows behind the landlord's old boxes, they found an old sleeping bag, food wrappers matching her missing groceries, a water bottle, a cheap prepaid phone. When they checked it, they found only a handful of messages, all deleted except for one thread, an unsaved number. The last outgoing text had been sent at 2:10 a.m. a few nights earlier. "I can hear you moving." The man himself was gone. They never found him. The working theory was simple and somehow worse than anything Hannah had imagined. He'd been living in the attic for at least a couple weeks, coming down when she was at work or asleep, creeping along the walls and ceiling, using the hollow spaces in the deck and the hallway to knock on doors and door sills from just out of sight. 3 times. Always 3. Testing her. Letting her know he was there, without ever truly letting her see him. Hannah moved out within the month. The landlord changed the locks, sealed the attic hatch, and told the next tenant the house was perfectly safe. To this day, she still can't stand unanswered knocking, and especially late at night, and especially when there's a door with a window. Because she knows now, if you ever hear 3 slow knocks in the middle of the night, and you don't see anyone standing on the other side of the glass, you might want to stop looking outside, and start thinking about who's already inside your house.